Welcome everyone. This is the Betty Eats podcast and I am Betty. Welcome today, Sarah Copeland. I'm so happy to have you, and I think most people know who you are from your newsletter, Edible Living, but also from your stint at Real Simple and so many other places, Food Network. Welcome, Sarah. So happy to have you today.
Thank you, Betty. It's so nice to be here, and we have tried to connect for so long, and it's great that we're finally doing it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. You are a busy lady, but it is such a pleasure. Well, Sarah, I think that most people know who you are, but will you tell us a little bit about yourself and just what you've been working on lately?
Sure, of course. So I am a 4-time cookbook author. My first book, The Newlywed Cookbook, came out when I was a brand new newlywed, almost 15 years ago. I actually had a bun in the oven. I was baking my baby and my first book at the same time, which was really fun and very crazy. And then I proceeded to write a book feast. I have Every Day is Saturday. It's right in front of me, my dog-eared desk copy, and Instant Family Meals. I have also worked for Food Network for 6 or 7 years. I worked at Real Simple as the food director. I'm a contributor to the New York Times, and my greatest joy is just sort of helping people sort of build a repertoire of things that make their everyday moments at home more exciting.
You have accomplished so much. Oh my goodness. Did you grow up cooking and learn from your mom, or how did you come to this field?
Well, it's interesting because my mom is a wonderful and very wholesome cook, but she didn't love cooking. She loved baking. She made beautiful birthday cakes and gorgeous pies and homemade cookies. We hardly ever had a cookie out of a package when I was growing up, even though it was the 80s, 90s. We always had wonderful homemade treats, and then just sort of wholesome dinners like chicken, mashed potatoes, broccoli, or cashew chicken, or pretty basics. And then my dad grilled. So we were a big food family in that we love to eat. And I'm from 2 farming families, so everybody was always interested in how food was grown, and everyone was sort of engaged in food, and both my grandmothers were also great cooks, especially my dad's mom. She's Southern. She made, biscuits and gravy and the best cobblers. But we were not a family where like all the kids were in the kitchen or everyone was engaged with my mom. She just sort of produced, and I'm using that word because now I'm a mom and that's sometimes how it feels. She just sort of produced dinner. It appeared on the table, every night. And pancakes in the morning. I mean, she just was she kept the table full. Where me and my sisters got really involved specifically was baking cookies and stuff with her. But it wasn't until much later that I had any interest in cooking at all. It really came for me through restaurants. My dad is super passionate about travel, about we're from northern Illinois, north of Chicago, about an hour and a half. And he would always get Chicago Magazine and like, who are the Michelin star chefs? Who are the best and the brightest and the newest? And once a year at Christmas time, he would take us downtown to these like extraordinary dinners and to the ballet.
Wow.
And, he would sort of prep us like, as I got older, we're going to go, this guy worked for Danny Meyer in New York City, and, we're going to go to Charlie Trotter's. These are old names that younger people won't know, but, Grant Aschatz of Alinea, like, we were just always kind of keeping up. And then I think it really kind of sealed together the first time I moved away from home, which was study abroad in Dublin. I had my own apartment, my own kitchen. I lived with a woman from Germany. She was Swiss German, from Switzerland, a Spanish woman, and a woman from Ireland, and then me from the United States. So we were sort of taking turns teaching each other the cultures we came from. I would make like American treats for them, like cookies or peanut butter Rice Krispie treats, or even just Rice Krispie treats. And my roommate from Switzerland would make like raclette, or like these layered potato and cheese dishes, and she'd serve it with applesauce on the side. So we were just sort of learning from each other. And that was the first time I
Wow.
had the opportunity or the need to cook. So that just kind of opened up my world. And then I studied journalism. So when I moved to New York City to do journalism, of course, I was in the hotbed of culture and restaurants. And because of that
Yeah.
connection my dad had made for me that, like, restaurants are theater, restaurants are art, restaurants are, deeply important to the culture. I sort of took that and ran
Yeah.
with it. So I just wanted to try everything. Literally, I made peanuts for an income, but whatever extra I had or not extra, I probably did the restaurants first, and then whatever was left over, that's when I could maybe buy toilet paper. I was very invested in learning, so I just wanted to dive right in, and that just opened door after door. I got interested in culinary school. I went to culinary school. I moved to France. I worked as a private chef, and then just doors just kept opening. I had no intention. I love writing. That's my first love, and photography is really my second love. And so I had no intention in going into a career in food at all, like zero. But doors just
Wow.
kept opening, and I would just walk through them and see what was on the other side. And it was always sort of this, metaphorically delicious path. And, I never stopped opening the doors because they were just, each one was more enticing than the next in a sense.
I love that journey because it's really kind of this serendipity, like you said, it's just like, oh, this door's open, I'll walk through it. I love
Right.
that. That is so interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm sure
And
I
I
was
love
influenced
that
by the
too.
fact that people in food tend to be very generous. People in
Oh,
magazines and also specifically women's magazines I was mostly working on. I worked at Oprah magazine and I worked at Glamour magazine, and you know, I had incredible mentors and bosses, but it was a tough world for sure. And of course, restaurants are very tough as well. But the people
yeah.
who I was engaging with in food were very generous, and so that just sort of was always pulling me and luring me into like the curiosity and joy of it. It didn't feel like work. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
I just sort of, I was on this path that sort of had a very gentle why, and eventually I sort of veered off. Of course, I took my writing and my photography with me, which is a huge, huge part, especially photography. I think
Yeah.
is one of the defining details of my brand and my work. And the writing needs to be storytelling. I'm just not interested in just writing a recipe if there's no connection to where I learned it or where it came from. I know not everyone wants to read a story before a recipe, but you can always just skip down. But for me, that's the two. Separating the two is not that interesting to me anymore.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That is such a hallmark. When I read your newsletter, I love getting drawn into the story of how did this come about? And of course, your photography is beautiful. Your recent pictures of your time in Hungary, gorgeous.
Oh, thank
Gorgeous
you. Thank
photos.
you
It
for
kind of
being a reader,
takes you right
buddy.
there.
That was
So
an
yeah,
incredible.
just
I
really
mean, we
beautiful.
always have an incredible time when we travel with my kids, but that was a really special. It was a special year, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting because I think that is where I'm trying to think of where it was. I think it might have been on Lynn Hill's Food Stack. She had asked a question and you had answered, and I saw that you had this Hungarian connection, and I think that's where we were first like, wait, what? Hungary?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, you said I lived in Hungary. I met my husband in Hungary. I think that's the very first comment from you I ever like latched onto, and
yeah.
we knew like, oh, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, which is so interesting. So my husband is not Hungarian, but yours is Hungarian. And so
Right.
I love that you go back to his family every year and spend time there. And I'm sure, like you talked about learning the different food traditions and cultures from your roommates, you've probably, I'm guessing, done that in Hungary as well. What are some of the things that you have
Yeah,
enjoyed and
it's
learned
funny.
there?
I've never made that connection, but I think that's interesting that it just as you said it, the very first time I ever lived away from home was with people from different cultures. So it's not that surprising. Then, of course, moving to New York as well. But then making a home with someone from a different culture felt very natural to me because there was just a lot more curiosity. There was a lot more to learn. And because András's parents do not speak English at all, and when we met, I did not speak Hungarian at all. I speak, pretty poor, but passable Hungarian now. Our language is definitely food. So from the very beginning of dating him, I was in the kitchen with his mom. I would just be kind of over her shoulder, like, "What are you making?" And there's this funny story that when on the trip that he proposed to me, his grandmother, his Kicsinaj mama, she's teeny tiny. She was like 84 years old, and she would make her strudel every few days. And he said,
Oh my goodness.
she's going to be my wife. She needs to know how to make it. It was like I passed the test. I was going to be able to be past the family recipe. And so she invited us to come to her house to learn to make strudel. Actually, I think András asked her, can you teach Sarah to make strudel? And we'll be there at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, whatever the day was. And when we arrived at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, the strudel was already made, hot, piping, ready to be eaten. And he was, I was upset. He was so upset. He was so upset. It was like this grown man became a little boy, like, what? And he called his mother. It was very, very funny. He called his mother called her mother and said, "Can you just make it again with them to teach her how?" And it became this whole ordeal. But I have videos that I've never done anything with, videos and photos of that day that are so special. And so I just, whenever I spent time with his mother or his grandmother, it was in the kitchen or in their garden in the fields. And whenever I spend time with his father, it's in the orchards where he grows, pears and blackberries and apples and peaches and, all the fruits basically. So that's how we communicate.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That family connection. And that is so interesting that you say that. When I first moved to Hungary, I was living with an older couple, renting a room in their home. And it was in Budapest, but they had a little, I guess like a cabin almost, and it was just outside. And I don't remember the name of the town. We drove for probably like 45 minutes. And they had a little cabin and they had a garden. They had trees, and it was kind of in this area where a lot of people had little cabins, and I guess it had been in their family a long time. But yeah, that's exactly what they did. Was they had little plum trees and apple trees, and I just remember going to pick some things with them because she was going to can everything and process everything before the winter, and that's a thing, which it was so
and
interesting.
that's very common, actually, especially any of our friends who grew up in Budapest or writers, Hungarian food writers that I know write about this. Judith Neuenbeyer, they write about this exact experience with their grandparents. So people of means in Budapest generally have a plot of land like an hour or less, 30 to 45 minutes outside of Budapest. And they have these community gardens, and like you said, they have a little sort of a cabin is the perfect word. It's, sometimes they can sleep there, sometimes they're just spending the whole day there. So they need shelter, maybe they would take a little nap. That's where they would like collect everything. It's their own little shelter, but within this massive community space. It's a really special thing. I'm sure they probably have that in Ukraine, maybe Poland, other places as well, but I know it to be a very traditional Hungarian thing for city dwellers to have that because they're very, very connected to the land. Even people who live in cities, even now in 2025, all of András's friends, male and female, they all jam, they all can their own fruit, they can their own tomatoes, they pickle. If you were to go, I mean, even when he and I first met, I was in my late 20s, and I was interested in jamming and canning and of course, because I was deeply immersed in the food world. But at that point, I'd already gone to culinary school and was 5 or 6 years into my culinary journey. But I was surprised because none of my friends in New York City, besides me, and none of my non-food business friends jammed or pickled or canned or anything. It wasn't like cool yet. And I went there,
Yeah.
and all of his friends, even like a 25-year-old girl who lived alone, she would have an apartment, but on her little patio there'd be pickles in the summer, and she'd be spending a whole afternoon making apricot jam. I mean, it's very common to this day. So that's
Oh,
pretty special.
interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, and it kind of sounds like you maybe had some of that in your past as well. Coming from a farming community and stuff. I mean, I'm guessing your mom and grandma probably did that too. And
My
yeah.
grandmothers did. My mother did not. She grew up on a farm, and when she met my dad and they moved to a city life, she said, I'm done with all of that. So I think it skipped that generation. She had plucked chickens and removed their hair and wringed their neck and collected eggs her whole childhood. And so when she and my dad moved from Missouri and Iowa, where they were in each from, and they met and moved our family to Northern Illinois for my dad to do his residency, and that was completely, modern and removed from all of their family members. My mom said, like, great, we're going to go to the grocery store, we're going to get all our food in the groceries. So when I was, I don't know, about 12 or 11, I said, I want to start a garden. I want to turn our sandbox into a garden and grow our own
Oh,
food. And I was very obsessed with the victory gardens. I was like a little
oh yes.
historian, very into that. And I would plant fruit seeds all over the yard secretly, thinking that I was going to just like create an orchard out of nothing. Like I just planted all my watermelon seeds and all my peach pits, and
Wow.
they were like, what is she out there doing? Please, like, So, and then after college and culinary school, I said I wanted to go work on a farm, and they were like, no, we did all this work to get our family off the farm. So, I'm very interested in agriculture and regenerative agriculture, but it's not a subject that I talk about with my parents. They don't want to hear it. They did their family life, their farming life, I mean. Um, I think in my whole childhood, I never saw my mom make a pickle or a jam or a jelly or anything from scratch like that. But when I would go to my grandma's house, the shelves were lined with her own pickles and her own jellies and jams.
Wow. Wow. So of course you do that now with your kids, or do you feel like you are passing on some of that gardening and farming and interest in canning?
Yeah, that's such a good question. My kids have been in the garden with me since birth. They were on and in the kitchen with me since birth. I think some of their earliest photos, they're wrapped in a wrap or baby Bjorn or whatever, facing me while I'm
Yeah.
cooking, and then facing out. I would give them little tastes of everything. And I was thinking about this actually this morning, because last night, Monday night, is the only night that it's my whole entire family is home right now, because I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and my husband works in New York City and we live in Hudson Valley. So there are many, many busy nights with sports and activities, and then he's going back and forth. So Monday night is one of the rare nights where we're all home, and I called everyone into the kitchen to help, and I said, I was making schnitzel, and I said to my daughter, can you make, a dressing for cabbage, like a very light cabbage slaw, and, Matthias, can you, help me with the schnitzel, like pounding we were making chicken schnitzel because we had had pork last week. So pounding it thin, and everyone was sort of a little bit like, oh, I don't feel like it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I realized they were in the kitchen with me and in the garden with me their whole childhood. And really just in the last year and a half, without me noticing, because I'm just like getting it done and we have somewhere to be and like putting dinner on the table, that the same thing is happening that happened in my family, which is like mom is like producing the dinner. And it used to be a family activity for us. We would bake together quite a bit. They would always garden with me, especially gardening and baking. Less the cooking, less the like nuts and bolts, but like pancakes and waffles and quick breads, and we would make pasta together.
Yeah.
And they were all. My son does still garden with me. He has his own sunflower patch, and he helps me to plant and harvest and everything else. But my daughter, who was my big gardener and loved baking, she's just so busy in her own life. She's a ballerina. She's in all these challenging classes. And so I do sometimes think about, and you, Betty, you have adult children. I'm starting to get to the point where I think about, okay, have I imparted enough that when we're all back home, and of course I'm dreaming of a bigger house, a bigger kitchen, where I'll receive my adult children and their partners, and of course they're all going to love to cook, and we're all going to just be in there making these extravagant meals and having wine and all the things you can't do when your children are like little, because of sitting at the table is challenging for them, or when they're teens because they have a busy life. I imagine like that crowning glory moment of like adult children coming and wanting to participate. I can only hope. I mean, I think they will love cooking themselves, and they're both very independent. They like being able to do things. My son is quite adept in the kitchen. I mean, he is 10. He makes his own omelets. He fries his own eggs. If I making dressing, I'll give him the garlic. He will chop that garlic so fine with a huge chef's knife without missing a beat. He will slice the onions very thinly. I mean, he's industrious. He likes a task. He won't always stick around for the whole procedure, but he likes to own something. Like he likes to own the project start to finish. Like, you're making this cake or you're making this dressing. He's our dressing maker in our family. He makes dressing, every other day for dinner, for salads.
That is so great. Yeah, and I think though that just by imparting that time in the kitchen and the time in the garden, that's like seeds planted, and it doesn't always
Yes.
bloom when they're teens, but definitely when they move out. Like, I have gotten phone calls, Mom, so how did we used to make the, so they remember, and that kind of that
Right.
memory is in there, and yeah, so when they need it, they will definitely be calling you. How
I
did
think
this go
that's true.
again?
My friend Katie Morford, she was pretty much home with her kids when they were young, and she started becoming more active in her career again. She's a dietitian, and she didn't write her first cookbook till after her oldest two were already in high school, and then she continued writing books, and she has a great feed as well on Instagram where she gives kind of practical dietitian wisdom. But her girls are now all out of the nest, and they call quite a bit with tips and tricks and like how to make certain things for their friends or their boyfriends or whatever it is. And I think I know that that's inside of them, and I feel really confident about that. I think every parent has like the romanticized version of what you imagined your family life around food would be. And I
Yes.
thought, since I can make just about anything, and I introduced my kids to every ingredient when they were tiny. My daughter was eating oysters by age 4, and my kids just really
Oh
ate
yeah.
everything. But now my son, being 10,
Yeah.
he's very socialized about school food. He loves school lunch, which is like, tater tots and turkey tacos. They do a decent job. It's all from scratch, and it's all real ingredients,
Oh,
but it's
wow.
very American kid food, tacos and tater tots and burgers, and he wants that all the
Yeah.
time now. So I'm having that little bit of a push pull where I'm like, but don't we want to, make a 3-course, whatever? They're just not. They don't have the patience for it at the moment.
But those memories are there, and they will remember them and come back to them for sure.
Yes, absolutely true.
Yeah. That is wonderful. I love that your kids have kind of this broad education when it comes to food, and then also just their exposure as well, going to, see their grandparents in another country. I think that kind of adds to the mix, and so I know even like so for my kids, their grandma, my mom is from Korea, and so they got introduced to Korean food very early on, and kind of a similar path where they're kind of like, in their preteens and teens, but now they're like, okay, how do we make kimchi?
Oh, right. That's
How does
wonderful.
grandma
That's
do
wonderful.
that?
And I do think when you have something that's distinctive, like Korean food or Hungarian food or Chinese cooking, and you realize that
Yeah.
this is part of who I am, that makes me different than other people, but similar in that we have a family tradition. So it's like it's an entry point for their friends to learn a little bit about them and their culture and the family they came from. And it can be a pride point for them. I mean, my daughter is very proud of her Hungarian roots. And Matthias is becoming more as well. But Greta is, she's always loved like paprika and poppy seeds. And, she's very proud of that food, and she loves having her friends. In fact, I'm just about to write about a Hungarian birthday party she asked for her 9th birthday. And like, that's when she really turned that corner of deep interest in Hungarian cooking. And for sure, I mean, their favorite food in the world is rolled palacinta, is like stuffed Hungarian pancakes stuffed with either curd cheese and lemon or plum jam and poppy seeds, all homemade, and that's what their grandmother makes. We traveled quite a bit together as a family: Croatia, Italy, Slovenia, Slovakia. We spent a lot of time in that region, and the Croatian food is sort of Croatia used to be a part of Hungary, so there's a mix of sort of Hungarian influence and also Italian influence. And then also we all really love Italian food. So that's sort of like our family's common denominator is pastry, because that's Hungarian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Hungarian, and Croatians have wonderful strudels. They're not all like Hungarian strudels. Sometimes they're more puff pastry like. Hungarian strudels, very, very crispy and flaky, as you know. But we have these sort of things that are distinctly us. I wish it wasn't pastry all the time, because we all eat a lot of sweets. We're very clean in our day-to-day eating, but on the weekends we do indulge in a little. We all like a good pastry, like one or two a weekend is kind of the sweet spot.
I think that's a perfect balance.
Yes, I agree.
That sounds fabulous. Oh, well, one of the things that I do like to talk about with all of the guests that come on the program is AI, and just how it has kind of infiltrated the food world. And I know people kind of have this love-hate relationship with it, but what is your take on that? Is that something that you have seen and think, okay, this could be helpful, or is it like, oh, this is terrible? And then the follow-up question would be, we've all kind of been duped sometimes by AI created recipes and different things like that. Do you have any tips for listeners in how you deal with that, and maybe how you vet a recipe if you are looking for something and wanting to recreate something? What are some of the things that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of recipe creation, we know that ideas are recycled, reinvented, shared, adopted from different cultures, from different experiences. Like, for example, I worked in 3 different restaurants in New York City. I worked as a private chef in France, and I worked, in a cooking school in Dulphy in Old Provence. So my early days of my cooking was very French influence, right? Now we have this global influence. We can access anything all the time. So I think the reality is that we're all sharing a lot of ideas, which is a wonderful thing. But in terms of the validity and a recipe working, I believe it should always be made by human hands. It needs to be tested and tasted 2 to 3 to 4 times. I mean, when I worked at Food Network, obviously we had bigger budgets than individual people and creators and brands have, but we would test things 7 times before we would put it in print. When I worked at Real Simple, we would test things 3 to 5 times before we would put it in print, by different people. All of my cookbooks have been tested by me, my in-house staff. Like, I'll have an intern or an assistant test everything.
Right.
I will have made it twice. They will have made it once or twice, or at least until it's perfect, maybe 3 times if necessary. And then it goes to an outside tester. So imagine all the details that go into that. And then you take something that was written by a computer. There's just, that's so slippery. That's so slippery. So for me, I would always go to someone with a track record, someone who has lots and lots and lots of years behind them as a cook, as a food writer, someone who is doing both, and has put down the track record, has shown that they have an expertise in this. And that's not to say that a new creator can't create a good recipe, but they need to study it just like anything else. I mean, I wouldn't go to a doctor who just came on the scene and had never, had a residency and interned and put in their time, right? Obviously, that's your body and that's medical, but food is too. What we put in our body, and the cost of food is so high. There's so much work involved, and there's so much delicious food you can get at a restaurant. So for people to go out and spend their money and their time, write a list, go to the place, buy the groceries, bring it home, cook it. We're putting a lot of faith in the creator. And I think that deserves a level of honor and integrity that is not about going to AI. I do think AI has its uses. I think of AI as an assistant when I don't have an assistant or my assistant is not available. Like, hey, I'm going to give you some of my recipes and I want you to put together a shopping list for me. That's a perfect use. Of course, I'm going to check it 2 or 3 times because things will be missing. But organizationally, I've tested it out for things like, while we were in Europe this summer, I was like, oh my gosh, our fall schedule is going to be so insane. And I'm going to plug in every day that the kids have their different sports and have it. I just want to see what it can do. Have it come up with what nights can we actually cook dinner together? What are the slots for dinner that allow us to like sit down and eat, whatever. And I put in everyone's details. I was super organized and detailed. And it fed me it 3 or 4 times with mistakes. So those are places where there's a low lift situation, right? I would say if someone's using AI to create a recipe, they better be going back in the kitchen and testing it again and again until it's right. Aggregating information from the web is what AI I think is going to be good at. It's faster than the human brain. It's like a calculator, right? Like we could sit there and do math all day long, but and you have to learn it in school, but then later in life you get to use the calculator, right? But I think especially if you're a new creator, don't use that calculator. Learn the math. That's how I think of it. And I just wouldn't feel comfortable putting. Thank you. Yeah, I wouldn't put anything out there that I hadn't tasted, tested in my own kitchen. In fact, I have a great article that I worked on with an Italian chef this summer. He is incredible. There's so many stories there. I have incredible photos. He gave me his recipe, kind of loosely, the way he makes it in his kitchen, but restaurant portions. And I still haven't put it out there, even though all the pieces are there, because I need to spend 2 or 3 days just working over that pasta and making sure that, Susan in Colorado can repeat my results, because otherwise I've really wasted her time. And I'm certainly not going to ask for a paid subscription from someone who I'm not putting in the work to give them my best.
Yeah. That is such a good point too. And, in terms of like testing and retesting, this is kind of funny. Just last night, I've been playing around with bar cookies, and just, time wise, it's like, oh, I don't have time to like cut and roll and blah, blah, blah. And so I was testing out a recipe and trying to modify one. And I totally messed up on the timing. In the original recipe, it talks about it being in there for 55 minutes, and I thought, that's kind of long, but okay, that's what it says. And anyway, completely burned. So my whole
that was
house
way too long.
slightly smells like smoke. Still, just it's like I should have known better,
Oh no.
but it is. It's that testing, and who knows? Maybe this was a recipe generated by AI. I just think, it
Right,
obviously a
that was
human
really
did
off.
not. Yeah, it was really
Did not
off.
test it.
So
Now, here's a way it
yes.
could be useful is, let's say you were writing a recipe from your own life, from your own experience with, you've researched other vetted and tested recipes for ideas or for formulas maybe. But you wanted to write it in your own words, and you wanted to explain the way you fold pastry or the way you do something. You could say to AI, like, go ahead and write it yourself, and then say, like, look at 3 sources I trust: the New York Times, King Arthur Flour, and bon appetit. And what are the most commonly used phrases that help me to explain this difficult procedure in a way that is more understandable? So I think of
Oh,
AI as a way to help you think smarter. Don't let the AI think for you. Help it, ask it
right.
to put you to the test. Make it help you think smarter, be a better communicator. Almost like see your blind spots. That's in my opinion, as a trained journalist with 20 years of print experience and reputable articles, magazines, and print, I think that would be an ethical use of it to say, like, make this idea better and more clear. And then you're going to take it and you're still going to put it in your own words. You're not going to copy and paste it, but you're going to let it
Right.
help you see your blind spots. Because the fact is, most creators at home, we're working on limited budgets. We're a team of 1 or 2 or 5 at the most. Some people have photographers and they outsource, and they have assistants all over the place doing things for them, but most of us don't. So I think you have to be smart. You have to educate yourself on. I've done quite a bit of reading about it because I want to understand where it's going to come
Yeah.
in, where it's intersecting, and I want to learn. I don't want to be
Yeah.
left in the dust, but I also want to be the most ethical. I don't want my ethical standards to slide because everyone else thinks it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea of almost treating it like a research assistant in a way, like go research that for me.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's not
Yeah.
fact checking for me. It's not doing my research for me, but it can help me see my
Yeah.
blind spots.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. What is the next thing you're working on, and are looking forward to at this time?
Well, I have 2 book ideas in the works, which will remain unnamed
Oh.
at the moment, but both of them are very, very different from one another. And I think there was a time after I wrote my 4th book that I thought there's only one more book I really want to do. Most people can probably guess what it is, but now and all the while I'm always hashing away different ideas. But books are really challenging right now. They're expensive to make. The payout usually isn't there for authors. If you have a high standard for photography and you want it to be a kind of evocative, lived in, and I like in situation photography. I don't want studio photography. I want it to be real. I want it to be lived in. So I don't want to do more books just to do more books. There's so many incredible books out there. Does the world need more? There's a few more I think the world needs. I don't think the world needs hundreds and hundreds more right now. I think we have a lot of incredible
Yeah.
books out and tons of incredible resources for food, for nutrition, for travel. And there's still cultures and stories that haven't been told. Of course, there's always that. But I don't think we need a lot of generic mainstream cookbooks anymore. I think there's just so much and it's overwhelming. And I want anything I add to
Yeah.
the conversation to be special and sort of like missing, something that's missing for people. But I'm always jotting down ideas, and there's a few that just keep coming back to me that I think are very helpful, that can really change people's lives and their relationship with their bodies and how they feel in the world. So I won't say more, but I'm working on a couple of those ideas. I think my true nature as I age is starting to come forward, which is like I'm very tactile. I love working with people. Being behind a desk is getting harder and harder for me. I want to be in my garden, with other people in the garden. I want to be preparing physical, tangible things. So having a brick and mortar
Yeah.
experience that I create has always been on my radar, probably for the last 10 to 15 years, but it's starting to
Oh,
come up really
wow.
strongly again for me. So I'm just always exploring. I'm in that spot where my kids in a few years will be incredibly independent for the first time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm realistic about the point of like what I can manage right now and what is opening up for me in the future, and just sort of paving the stones.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an exciting time. It's almost like you are looking into the next season and sort of pondering what to do next. And so I love
Right.
that.
When my kids were 6 and 10, I have or 6 and 11, I have a 5-year age gap with my kids. All I wanted was for them to stay little. I just wanted them to be near me all the time. And
Yeah.
the idea of my older one getting older was just so, it was overwhelming to think like it won't always be like this. We're all just cozy at home and eating our dinners together in the garden. But once one of your kids, I'm sure you experienced this, Betty, having 3 kids, once one of your kids crosses the threshold into independence and teenagehood, and you start to see these little slivers of adulthood, you think it's going to be
Yeah.
okay. They're just more and more interesting. They're just more and more beautiful people all the time. And they're still my favorite people to be around. I like them better than most adults, but they're off doing their own things. And, I'm happy to be reconnecting with myself and learning, and finding time for the things that we're really missing, especially since COVID. I mean, my kids were still fairly young. I had a 4-year-old when COVID started. So,
Oh, yeah.
COVID times was very immersive for me. I was already very incredibly busy. I had 2 books out and a TV show going with Food Network. So it was a web show, but it was a very intense and exciting time for me. And everything had to come to like an abrupt halt. And so I just really gave myself over to them in large ways. I've kept working, obviously, but in large swaths of time, we're just given over to their development and keeping them safe and thriving in a weird world. So it's neat to be kind of reconnecting with bigger chunks of time again and being like, how do I want to fill them? Not just automatically with what I used to do, but what I want to do next. Yeah, and I look at, like even, someone in your stage of life with grown kids and being able to have a podcast. That's something that I've always wanted to do. And I've had an idea for one that I'm really excited about for quite a while. But, to be able, you want to start something you can manage and something you can follow through on. And I do now admire other creators when I look at their kids have just crossed this sort of threshold instead of being like, oh, the empty nest fear and the sadness about it, I'm more paying attention to what they're able to do now with that time and letting that excite me.
Oh, it's bittersweet, but it's also fun, It's like a both. For sure. Well, of all the things that is just looking back on your career and maybe even looking forward, has there been a favorite thing or a thing that you're just like most proud of that you've done or that you're hoping to do?
I think of all my books, my first book, the Newlywed Cookbook, still sells nicely. And that's, that is a huge honor to know that people still buying a book that's been out on the market for well over a decade. Whereas other books that I knew more, I had more life experience, I had more culinary experience, I was more connected, that I put my heart and soul into maybe didn't sell quite as well as that one. So it's interesting that you would think my biggest pride point is having a book that still sells. That's wonderful. That pays me royalties and all of that. But I would say, this is again my super dog-eared book, Everyday Saturday. This just came from such a sweet spot in my life, like really finding who I really am as a creator, as a food person. It was a sweet spot in my family life. My husband had just started his business. We had just moved up here. I had, a toddler and a 6-year-old, and these recipes I still make. I mean, the reason this, this book, I'll show you for the people who are watching. The inside is so interesting because it's this bright, awesome color, and then with this, but mine is just filthy. I mean, and normally I'm a bit of a tidy kind of a person. I like things to be really. My bookshelves are color coded. My closet's color coded. I like everything kind of neat and tidy and pinned together. But this actually makes me very proud that with all the access to food and recipes and restaurants and if you looked around my office, if I turned my camera around, you would see 250, 300 incredible books from creators I adore and love and admire from all over the world. This is still the book I use day in and day out to feed my family. And it's neat to have a repertoire. Obviously from a professional point of view, you want your books to sell like hotcakes. You want to You want to rise to the top, all of that. As a mother, also, though, it's really neat to have a repertoire of what defines your family's life in food, and that you go to, and that are all the pinpoints of your children's memories. You know, their birthday parties, the thing you make after the Nutcracker every year when my daughter performs, or you know, the cookie that I bring to my son's soccer game, which also is a very loved cookie and got a lot of press. And it's produced by a couple of bakeries here in town. It's called the cookie for modern time, the chocolate chip cookie for modern times. It's in Everyday Saturday, which is one of my best cookie recipes. But you know, of course, it's great that it got press and that people love it, and people always. But it's also really special to me that like the soccer boys come to me and they say, "Did you bring your cookie? Did you bring your cookie?" Things like that. And I say that only for listeners
That's
who are
special.
not professional creators of recipes, that it's still worth your time to sort of collect your family's cookbook together. And that book of all my books sort of represents the thing that I think my kids will look back on and be like just flooded with memories, which is very, very special to have.
Oh, that is special. That is like it's like a record of, like you said, your
Right.
family's favorites. And yeah,
I haven't been
I
good
love
at
that.
printing photographs of my children's childhood, but it's all printed. A lot of it's printed in there. You know, the foods we ate. There are pictures of my kids in there as well. But you know, I haven't been a scrapbooker. I haven't put together all those wonderful books, you know, that you can do online. And I did when they were little. It's just hard to keep up. But I do feel like it's neat to have this tangible thing that the whole family will look back on and say, like, we were really a part
Yeah.
of something special together.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
And I think, you know, I think just one final thought on that was just that, you
Yeah.
know, I guess I'm really proud of having a career that I was able to keep my kids close to me for so long.
Hmm.
It's not really possible for me to do it in the same way now, you know, because they're older and I want them to have their privacy and they are busy with their own things. But I am proud that I was able to, instead of just stepping out of the workplace or rolling over and letting other people take opportunities, I found a way to be the kind of mother and parent that I wanted to be, want to be, while creating projects, books, you know, opportunities
Yeah.
for myself that really resonated and kept me inspired and kept me interested. So I think, like, looking back, sometimes I'm hard on myself saying, I wish I also did this, and I haven't achieved this that I planned on doing. But if I look back on it sort of with more loving eyes, I can say you did quite a lot
Yeah.
with your children literally by your side, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful we live in a world where that's possible for working mothers. It's really special.
Yes.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. I was stressed a lot of the time, and I was probably, you know, not as carefree as my mother was, but it was still pretty magical all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very special, and that's so important, and not only to you but to your kids as well, that they got to be part of that.
Right.
Well, as we finish up, Sarah, thank you so much for your time today and just this wonderful conversation. If people want to connect with you, where is the best place for them to connect with you, either online or through your newsletter, or what's, I can put links to all of
Yeah.
that.
Well, first of all, thank you, Betty, for having me. It's such a pleasure, and you have such a gentle tone, and it's just so nice to be in conversation with you and hear about your own
Oh,
family. And you know, of course, before we started recording, hearing about your grown children, it was really special to hear. For people who want to connect with me, the most up-to-date place where I'm sharing my newest and also some of my best and most nostalgic and most useful work of my sort of, you could say, archives is Substack. I post a new letter every week. I would say two-thirds of it is all new stuff, and then I'll post something that maybe they haven't seen or that's from one of my books, or I've remembered again that I used to cook all the time and now I'm making again for my family. So it's the best way. My Substack is called Edible Living. It comes to your inbox 3 to 4 times a month, and the archives have like 170 recipes that are I would say my best, my newest, my most beautiful, my most delicious, well-tested, tried and true. Nothing goes on the Substack without being tested at least 3 times. And then on Instagram, I'm not as active there as I once was, but Instagram, I'm also Edible Living. And that's where I just share more behind the scenes and day to day and little peeks into our lives. And our travels as well go on Instagram. A little bit of my travel goes into Substack as well. And then my 4 cookbooks are still alive and well and available to you every day, Saturday, Instant Family Meals, and the Newlywed Cookbook. Feast, my second book, is vegetarian, is out of print. But if you can get your hands on a copy and you have a vegetarian in your family, it's a real treasure.
Well, thank you so much. I will put links to all of that along with the show notes, and so people can contact you there. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your time today.
Thank you, Betty. Lovely to chat with you, and hopefully more again soon.
Yeah, thank you.